those two, I think it's this is sort of the epic of controversy from, I guess, 1976 and after. This is when he receives. Does he receive direct communication from Paul VI? Is that 1976?
Yes,
Okay.
he did. So, in 1976, the archbishop was suspended ad divinis. That's a censure that's inflicted on priests and prelates sometimes. It's basically saying it's a punishment where the Rome is saying you can't offer public mass anymore. You can't perform public sacraments anymore. And after that, Archbishop Lefebvre and Paul VI exchanged letters, and the Archbishop really wanted to speak directly to the Pope. And again, this is a sign of the goodwill of the Archbishop. And Cardinal Villot was trying to prevent him from meeting Paul VI, but eventually they were able to meet, and this was sort of an epic conversation between Paul VI, and it was really eye-opening for the Archbishop, because when he went to see Paul VI, one of the first things Paul VI said to him is, "Why are you commanding your seminarians to take an oath against me?" And the Archbishop was shocked. He's like, "Holy Father, I would never do anything like that. I'm not against you. I don't ask the seminarians to take an oath against you." So these were just the calumnies that were being leveled against him. That he was just hated the Pope, and I think Paul VI might have been a bit sensitive to that. So Paul VI was getting the wrong message, and the Archbishop was saying to Paul VI, "Holy Father, please, just let us celebrate the traditional Mass. That's all that I ask. Just let us celebrate it." And Paul VI was wavering. He was almost ready to grant it, and then Cardinal Villot butted in, and he said, "If you grant them this Mass, then they'll make a banner of it. They'll make it them sort of like a separate party in the church." And so Paul VI said no. It's interesting. Even Jean Guiton, the close friend of Paul VI, said the same thing to Paul VI. He's like, "Just let him have the Mass. I mean, what's the big deal?" But the Archbishop recognized that he had a right to celebrate that Mass because it had never been abrogated. And it's very interesting that he'd been told year after year, "You can't say this Mass, you can't say this Mass." And then Benedict XVI sort of posthumously, approved Archbishop Lefebvre's position by saying that it hadn't been abrogated. And so, in fact, for all those years, he did have the right to celebrate that Mass.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great quote by Lefebvre. I'm probably botching it, but it's something like, "How can you say that I can't say the Mass that I said the day after my ordination?"
Yes.
What changed? Why is that wrong now? And why is it the new Mass comes out in 69, it's promulgated. Why is it that in 1968 it's okay, and 1971 is bad? How does this make any sense?
Yes. And the Archbishop was a master of these sort of reductio ad absurdum arguments, and he would point that out. How can what has formed so many saints? It has been good yesterday, all of a sudden becomes bad, and what I was taught that was holy and righteous and everything, now all of a sudden is wrong. It just doesn't make any sense.
So this is the sort of the disintegration. This is the beginning of controversy. Archbishop Lefebvre moves on. He ordains his 1976 crop of priests, and the Society of St. Pius X continues to grow and move on. So it's sort of bring us out of the 70s and into the 80s. So
the society grew. The Archbishop had a few meetings with John Paul II. Basically, John Paul II took the same position as Paul VI. He wasn't going to grant the Mass to the Archbishop. In 1984, he granted an indult to other people in very restrictive circumstances who wanted to say the traditional Mass. The Archbishop continued to work with Rome, And he recognized that he was getting older. And one thing that the Archbishop expected was that many other bishops would join him in this fight for tradition. And in the end, he was disappointed in that expectation because there was only one bishop who ended up joining him, and that was Bishop de Castro Meyer, a Brazilian bishop, who was also part of that Chaetus Internationalis Patrum at Vatican II, that group of fathers who was working against the modernism in the council. So he recognized that his work was providential of forming traditional priests, that the church needed these traditional priests, that unfortunately there was no other institution at the time that was really forming traditional priests and maintaining the traditions of the church. He felt like, we've got these vast treasures of the church, and you don't want to have a situation where they get lost, where we sort of have this collective memory loss, and all these traditions go away. So he didn't want to die suddenly, and not even suddenly, but just period die, and then not have any way for his order to continue, and so that traditional teaching and practices to continue. And so he said, I need bishops. You can't ordain priests without bishops. And again, he didn't say, well, let's just make some bishops. I can do it. I've got the power. So let's do it. He didn't do that at all. He was very, very, very careful with this question. He wanted to look for some signs from divine providence. First of all, that the crisis of the church was as bad as it seemed. And so he looked for signs. He got two signs. One was the meeting in Assisi of John Paul II, where John Paul II in 86, where he gathered with all these different religions. And it was just a massive scandal of communicatio sacris. They're just there together and leveling of all religions, the denial of the rights of Christ the King. And the Archbishop always had a very, very deep sense of the rights of God. And this is what ended up motivating Archbishop all throughout his life. He had to answer to God. There was this deep consciousness of the fact that he has to answer to God, and he has to protect the rights of God above everything else. And then the second sign that he received was he submitted certain questions, dubia. I think we're fairly familiar with the word dubia because of the four cardinals submitting dubia to Pope Francis, right? And these are questions that are submitted to the Pope, and it's basically asking the Pope, can you please clarify the teaching of the Church on a particular question? So Archbishop Lefebvre submitted dubia to Rome on the question of religious liberty and separation of church and state. Does every individual person have the right to choose whatever religion he wants? Or is there no right to choose whatever religion you want? You have the duty to choose the right religion. And the response he got from Rome was effectively against Catholic teaching. So those two things indicated to the Archbishop that the crisis of the Church was very severe, the traditional teaching was not being continued, and that he needed to continue his particular priestly society in order to maintain the traditional practices. And then at that point, he went to Rome and he said, I would like to consecrate bishops. Can you please give me permission to consecrate bishops? So on the one side, there's these two signs saying that you need to go forward. It's not going to come of itself. And on the other hand, he goes to Rome to ask permission for that.
This Assisi 1986, for those that don't know, was a day of ecumenical peace and prayer with leaders and heads of various world religions, we might say idolatries. The most scandalous is, it's reported in the New York Times, there's photos, the Dalai Lama was there in Assisi, and they placed an idol of Buddha on an altar, on a tabernacle. It's kind of hard to tell on the picture. That definitely did happen. There are Native Americans smoking peace pipes in front of the Pope. And Archbishop Lefebvre and Bishop Castro Meyer issued this statement. I think it's in other places. I'm reading it. This is in Infiltration, but this is a statement by Lefebvre and Meyer. Public sin against the unicity of God, the Word incarnate, and His Church makes one shudder with horror. John Paul II has encouraged false religions to pray to their false gods. It is unprecedented and immeasurable scandal, and inconceivably impious and intolerable humiliation to those who remain Catholic, loyally professing the same faith for 20 centuries, end quote. This was, I mean, we think of the Pachamamas last October in 2019. This was that kind of a moment in 1986. A lot of us don't know that, but this was a huge scandal. And I kind of realized, oh, the 1988 consecrations, excommunications can only be understood as a response to the 1986 idolatry at Assisi. And by the way, that chapel where the Dalai Lama installed the idol of Buddha,
Yes.
it collapsed in later on and was totally destroyed by an act of God.
Yes.
So God, sometimes He strikes the Vatican with lightning when Benedict resigns, and sometimes He destroys chapels. God is communicating His will to us.
Absolutely.
So, Father, can you speak to the 1988 consecration? Archbishop Lefebvre decided he would ordain 4 of his priests, or rather he would consecrate 4 of his priests as bishops. And this, according to John Paul II, was a schismatic act, and it excommunicated Archbishop Lefebvre and the 4 new bishops, latae sententiae. Did I get all that right, and kind of give us some more info?
Yes, absolutely. So there's certain things that you can do as a Catholic that incur an automatic excommunication. And in the new Code of Canon Law, the consecration of bishops without apostolic mandate is one of them. However, canon law also indicates that if you believe that it's necessary, you don't incur that excommunication if you're not being flippant about it. But to be honest, Taylor, that the interview that you had with Bishop Schneider the other day, asking him about the society was fantastic. Bishop Schneider just explained things so clearly with regards to the question of whether the society is schismatic or not. And he said then that, well, it's obvious the Archbishop is not schismatic. To be schismatic is to deny the authority of the Pope. That's the textbook definition of being schismatic. So if you think about the schismatic Orthodox, the whole thing is they refuse to recognize the Pope as being the head of the church. So did the Archbishop do that? Was he refusing to recognize the authority of the Pope? Well, no. He went to the Pope. He asked for the permission of the Pope to consecrate the bishops.
He in the Mass where he consecrates, he commemorates the Pope.
Yes.
And he speaks of the Pope in the sermon.
Yes. Yeah. So there's no question of the Archbishop denying the authority of the Pope. That would be utterly abhorrent for the Archbishop. Absolutely impossible, metaphysically almost impossible for the Archbishop to deny the authority of the Pope. So it was just a practical decision based on, he said, I have to do this in order to continue my work, which is so necessary for the church. And meanwhile, to give an example of his spirit of Romanitas, his Romanity, he mandated that seminarians, all the seminary society, go to Rome at some point in their seminary formation. And they're like, I did a Rome trip, and the vast majority of the seminarians do a Rome trip. He founded a house in Albano near Rome. He wanted us to always be close to Rome in spirit. So it's just basically a very much a red herring to say that the society is schismatic, because there's no question of not recognizing the Pope. And we have the picture of Pope Francis in our chapels. We all say the name of Pope Francis in the canon of the Mass. So it's just not true.
Right. So that's 1988, and then the Archbishop goes to his reward in 91.
Yes, 91, March 25th, 1991, on the Feast of the Annunciation, is when he died, and his work continued after him, and it's grown. As we mentioned, we're all around the world, and we have far more requests for masses than we can satisfy. I think the District Superior of the United States says, we've got like 100 places, even just in the States, they're just wanting a society priest, and we're just too short-staffed to satisfy all those requests that we receive. Lots of people are dying for the traditional Mass. And I think at this point, we're 50 years after the Council. It's very clear that what Archbishop Lefebvre did and the sacrifices he made, very great sacrifices, definitely were for the benefit of the Church. Where would we be today if he had not done those things? What sort of permission would there be to celebrate the traditional Mass? How many priests out there would be celebrating the traditional Mass? Even a lot of the other traditional orders are derivatives of or breakoffs from the Society of St. Pius X. So it just, by the providence of God, he was the chosen instrument for the preservation of the traditions of the Church. And I think it's secure. They're not going to be lost. Yeah. But it would not have happened if he did not do what he did.
Yeah. Do you think that Cardinal Ratzinger, as he watched the events unfold in '86, and then in '88, and then when he became Pope, when he issued Summorum Pontificum, and he said it was never abrogated, which was always the argument of Lefebvre, even though if you had polled bishops in 1975, is the Mass of 1962 abrogated, you would probably get a 98% reply yes.
Yes.
So Benedict says it was never abrogated. Lefebvre was right on that. He lifted the excommunications. I know the Society of St. Pius X doesn't like that language because they said that they never held. Can I ask a quick question? There was a 1995 dissertation in Rome that concluded that Lefebvre was not excommunicated and was not schismatic. Was that by Father Gerald Murray?
Yes.
This is the Father Gerald Murray of Papal Posse? Of Ranger Royal?
I don't know where he is now.
All right. Trying to figure that out. But yeah, there was a dissertation that decided that, because in the 1983 Code of Canon Law, if the person who is to receive the late sententia excommunication is acting under fear, duress, necessity, or even if he feels like he is, which is kind of a weird thing to have in canon law,
yes,
the late sententia excommunication does not apply to him. And obviously,
right.
This is the case for Lefebvre. So, I'll go on camera and say I don't think Lefebvre was ever excommunicated. I don't think he's ever schismatic.
And it's kind of ironic for me, Taylor. It's kind of ironic for me that there's so much appeal to subjectivity today and people's subjective feelings, and I have to respect your conscience and so on. But the exception is for Archbishop Lefebvre. Right. He truly felt that this is what he needed to do, and there was no way he would do it otherwise. But it's like we haven't been able to appeal to that. We say that to Rome or what have you, and they won't even listen to that argument. But it's there in canon law. So
yeah, it's in the '83 Code. So we're bumping up on an hour and a half here, Father Robinson. What's next for the Society of St. Pius X? I know that Bishop Fillet was in talks. That seems to kind of fizzled out. Rome is definitely a different place in 2020 than it was under over 7 years ago under Pope Benedict XVI. So maybe we can do another show in the future and talk about canonical status, canon law, contemporary situations. I know a lot of people in the comments have been asking, what's the deal? Do society priests, can they hear confessions? The answer, of course, is yes. Francis has provided that. What about marriages? What about masses? These are all the practical questions, and I don't think we have time to go through all those today. But maybe you could come back and we could talk about that in the future.
I would love to do that, Taylor.
Good. So, all right. Well, let's give some people some homework or some advice if they want to learn more about this. The two things that come to my mind is the DVD that Angelus Press put out. Phenomenal DVD. I rented it on Vimeo. Mm-hmm. I think it was $3 or something like that. And then Angelus Press, once I started talking about this, they sent me a free DVD, so I got the DVD. So can you hold it up in front of your face, Father? Because I got you. There it is. Yeah. It's a great documentary. It's really good because it has a lot of the African footage and a lot of the missionary work, which is really lots of beautiful shots, and then interviews of people that were converted to Christ and were baptized during this time. So I think that's a really easy and quick way. But if you really want to do the homework, then you can get the book, the big book. Let me see if I can put it on the screen. You have a copy of it there. Let's see. And I'll ask the moderators to go ahead and link it in the, there it goes. Link it in the live chat. This is a great book. It has good pictures in it. It's very thorough. The footnotes in this, I mean, as an academic, I love footnotes. I pretty much read every footnote. This book has a ton of footnotes in it. It's very well researched. It's thick. So I would say that's probably the book, right, Father?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's a big book, but it's very readable, and it's an interesting story. As we've discussed, Archbishop Lefebvre's life is very rich. So there's many different chapters, and so that's why the book's so big. But it's also very readable.
And then I guess if you wanted to hear Archbishop Lefebvre in his own voice, I would recommend Letter to Confused Catholics, but maybe you would recommend something else.
Yes, so the open letter to confused Catholics, it's a very readable book as well. It's, again, that reductio ad absurdum arguments of the Archbishop. It's basically his pointing out that we're in a crisis, and it's still relevant, very much relevant today.
It reads like today. It could be written in 2020. Absolutely,
absolutely. There's also other resources. So the Apologia pour Marcel Lefebvre is by Michael Davies. There's 3 volumes of this, and this just steps us through that history of the times of 1975, 1976, and so on, where the Archbishop was dealing with Rome. And it's basically a compilation of documents, very interesting sort of documentary history of those times. They have crowned him as the Archbishop's book, exposing why Vatican II happened, how that spirit of we can reconcile liberalism with the Church effectively triumphed at the Second Vatican Council. If I can, there's another book over here. This is A Bishop Speaks. It are the interventions that the Archbishop made at the Council, and also some writings of his up to 1976. So you can get sort of his spirit in opposing the modern errors. But there's also some works of spirituality. We have his spiritual journey, which is sort of like his last testament, his last spiritual testament, especially to his priests. Then one of the priests of the society, Father Troidec, a French priest, has taken all the sermons of the Archbishop and he's grouped them into different topics. And so he made this book, The Spiritual Life, just about various spiritual topics that are arranged in different categories. And then for priests, he did another book, Priestly Holiness, which is for Archbishop speaking about the priesthood, which is the center of the Archbishop's spirituality, the priesthood in the Mass. So there's definitely a lot of very good resources out there, Taylor. And I'm not trying to earn money for Angelus Press, but I just want to make people know, people aware if they're interested in this topic, of what we discussed in this podcast. Then those are some very good resources that are available.
Yeah, very good. Well, Father Robinson, thank you so much. I think we'll pray at the end here, and if you'd like to issue a blessing, that would be great as well. I just ask everyone watching. There's over 1,200 people watching right now. If you would, please like the video. That tells YouTube that you like it. Also, if you want to hear, Father mentioned my interview with Bishop Athanasius Schneider, which was a little over a week ago. There's a snippet of, I asked Bishop Schneider about Lefebvre and about the Society of St. Pius X, and I have a second YouTube channel called Dr. Marshall Highlights. These are like little snippets that our friend Daniel does, and you can go over to that channel, and if you just want to watch Schneider talk about the canonical elements, and it's a shorter video, it's under 10 minutes, just a snippet from that interview with Athanasius Schneider. I'd encourage you to watch that. So please subscribe to that channel. Please subscribe to this channel. Like the video. Of course, appreciate all the support on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Taylor Marshall. And again, just thank you so much, Father Paul Robinson, for being on. And if you would, please lead us in a Ave Maria, Gloria Patri, and anything that you want to add. We'd love it.
Absolutely. In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. And I'll give a blessing. Benedictio Dei Omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos, et maneat semper.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Father Robert,
Taylor.
thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate it.
Just a reminder, everyone, pray the rosary daily. If you're not praying the rosary every day, you're not on the team. This is our lifeline right now in this time, and we need Our Lady, and we need those mysteries. So pray that rosary every single day. It's certainly something that Archbishop Lefebvre taught. And again, thanks so much, everyone, for watching. God bless you. Godspeed. Again, thank you to Father Robinson, and we'll see you in some videos to come. Till then.